So a lot of the schools have, what we've done is we give them the packet of paperwork and they hand it to the front desk and the front desk hands it to the school. If you're at Real Solutions seeing a community client, you're generally, the client's going to show up and you're just going to hand them the packet and they'll sit in the lobby and they'll fill out all the paperwork and then they bring it in, and when they bring it in, this is how I usually go over it. Or if I've seen Charmaine at times say, hey, one day a week, like her Thursday was her day, she was willing to work a little bit later. And so sometimes she would schedule new parents to come in like Thursday, that one day a little later. And she would then meet with the parents to sign the paperwork and start the whole process with the kid.
Nice.
And stuff. And so if I have a person come in either way, imagine they're at Real Solutions. What happens is, they show up, I hand them the paperwork, I say, go ahead, read through, start signing, have questions, let me know. And then I'm usually writing my notes or doing whatever for about 5-10 minutes, 10 minutes. My dream is they would show up a little early and I'd have time, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes they're showing up right after another client, so I'm getting out of there hopefully at 10 minutes to the hour and I'm saying, here's your paperwork, so glad to meet you, grateful you came in, I'm excited to work with you. Feel free to fill out the paperwork and enjoy it, and I'm going to use the bathroom and whatever else, Anyway, so I give them the paperwork, they start working. So imagine they then come into the paperwork, I bring them in the office, and oh, great, thanks for filling out the paperwork. There's some forms I have to review with you verbally. And I usually pull out the disclosure and consent first, and I say, hey, here's the disclosure and consent. You can look at it, and I'll talk about it. And so I'll just go like you're a client.
Okay.
So I say, first thing is, I'm licensed to do this. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and clinical professional counselor. I have some very expensive wall art that's cost me thousands to put up there.
Yeah.
I like to look at it. Makes me feel good. You can look at it. No, I may say that. Sometimes I joke just to make things a little bit lighter. It is expensive wall art. But so I'm licensed to do this. Next thing is confidentiality. Everything we do is strictly confidential. All verbal and written information cannot be released to any other party. Accordance with HIPAA laws that regulate all medical records. I guess you don't have to say all. I just have my little, I sound like a radio announcer there almost, But anyway, I say that, and so there are some exceptions that go with any medical records. First, by law, I'm mandated to report all instances of child abuse. Then there's lethal harm to self or others, suicide and homicide. Have you ever had counseling before? I usually ask, and they're like, no. And I say, okay, well, if you have further questions, let's explain that. If they say, well, yeah, and then I go, okay, well, then I'm assuming you pretty much have an idea of what those limits are. If they say no, then I say, so if one of those concerns would come up, I would discuss it with you, and we would look through it and work through it, and would only in the event that we couldn't assure your safety, that eventually I would talk to you and say, hey, we need to talk to someone else and stuff. So if you just say, oh, I had a tough day, I just wish I wasn't here, that's not somewhere where I would call someone else and do something like that. If it's a kid, usually I'm saying, hey, there's some parts of this that I'm going to talk about that you might want to listen to, and others you don't have to listen to at all, so I'll let you know. And so then when I get to the confidentiality part, I go, hey, this is one of those parts that, you might want to listen to and stuff. And so the first thing is confidentiality. And most kids are like, what? But then I say, some are like, well, I've seen Spy Kids and they had a briefcase that said top secret, confidential. And I'm like, yeah, that's what you're talking about. We're top secret, that only the really cool spies had the information, or there's OS headquarters where they'd go in and it would say top secret, confidential, and they had the really cool gadgets in there, and only the really cool spies got to see the really cool gadgets, and I always wanted them and stuff like that. But that's what confidential means, is top secret, which means that I don't share stuff. There are stuff that I might have to share because we counselors want to help keep people safe. And I'm doing this just like if you're a kid, I'd be like, to keep people safe. So if you tell me there's some big adult that's beating you up and leaving bruises on you and stuff and hurting you, I'd be like, oh, that's not safe. We got to call to get help. And then another thing is, if you told me that, you had a backpack full of explosives and machine guns and you're going to take out your school and stuff, I'd be like, whoa, that's probably not a good idea. So if you're going to hurt other people or yourself, I'd be like, hey, we need to do stuff to keep you and other people safe. And then the last, as if I was received a court order with subpoena and they drug me off to court and put me on the stand and made me put my hand on the Bible and swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and the judge looked at me and said, you got to say something, I'd have to comply with that one. Hasn't really happened ever to me. I don't think it's going to happen. Seen it on Law and Order, looked pretty cool, but not really and stuff. So that would be the last thing. And the kids are like, oh, okay. And I'm like, okay, well, good. So that's confidentiality. You can go back to your Legos, you know. Because usually I'll have the kid in there. I'm like, hey, the most common thing I do actually when I have a kid, this is me, is I say, hey, here's the paperwork for the parent, here's the paperwork for you, and I hand them a blank piece of paper and a bunch of pencils or markers or crayons, and I say, why don't you draw a picture of your family or something? So that way I can, those are pretty informative when they draw their family and stuff like that. Okay. And gives them something to do. Okay, so that's confidentiality. Then I go, the fee, that's where I talk about, like in the CDA, I talk about, hey, the fees are normally $100. You have Medicaid, and Medicaid pays for all of it. It is so cool. You shouldn't be charged for any of it. The exception is, oh, well, in order though for them to do that, you know, we have to do a CDA and ICANS and all this glorious stuff and stuff. Cancellations and misappointments. Each person has their own way. This is one that I'm really a stickler on myself, and this is me. In the schools, you're probably not going to have much of a problem.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, you're just going to be like, okay, I'm going to go get Timmy, and you walk down there and snag the kid. You're not like, oh, no show.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, yeah.
And stuff, but in the community, I go through a big, long spill there that I'm like, hey, this is different than a doctor's office. In the doctor's office, if I have a 2 o'clock appointment and show up, I'll sit in the waiting room for 35, 40 minutes, and then they'll be like, okay, Mr. Gregg. And then I go back there, and a nurse takes my blood pressure and all this and puts me in a room and says, okay, when the doc's ready, he'll find you. And 45 minutes later, doc comes waltzing in, and I see him. They do that so they have enough stuff that if someone misses their appointment, they still have plenty of opportunity to see clients, and they can bill all their time. I can't do that. My hour is dedicated to you. I dedicate this hour of my life strictly to you, and I can't replace it. And so as such, we have a strict no-show policy. And so if you miss an appointment, there's a missed session fee that will be charged to you, and you'll be kicked off my schedule and stuff like that. Okay. Any questions about that? No. And then I say, I do understand that people get sick and stuff like that, and so, you know, you call me up at 8 in the morning and go, my throat's like razor blades. I'll be like, stay away, I got kids. Don't share. Keep the critters to you. And that's okay. But if we have like a 2 o'clock appointment and I'm calling you at 2:01, or you're calling at 2 o'clock and say, oh, I'm sick, I'll be like, you knew about that. You didn't give me a heads up, and so I can't.
Now, do you hold the same thing at the school if a kid wasn't at, like if I had an appointment?
No, because I should know in the beginning of the day.
That's what I was thinking.
And I've seen counselors. The good thing is you kind of have a schedule. It depends on the school. Like I noticed Whitney, they're like, the highest priority in this kid's life, and Amy Pekerington, the principal, told me this flat to my face. I and Sarah, she's like, the highest thing in our priority as a school is this counseling appointment.
Wow.
I don't care what happens. You can jerk them whenever you want.
Yeah.
You can schedule them. There's no other class or anything that takes priority over this. You take priority. And I was like, let's get that in writing in blood. No.
That's very nice.
She did say that. But some don't. But I've seen some counselors where if a kid isn't there that day, they can just shift the kids around
Yeah.
and get a different kid, or they may even take a kid that was supposed to be seen the next day on Wednesday, and they'll see them on Tuesday, and then see the other kid on Wednesday and stuff. Some teachers are totally higgledy-piggledy. Oh yeah, take the kid whenever you want.
Yeah.
I don't really care. And so those are the teachers that I would be like, hey, you know, I'm gonna see Timmy today instead of tomorrow and stuff. I would probably try and adjust. Or some, you know, they might just, you know, see a kid that was normally later in the day, earlier at that time, and then leave earlier. I mean, you could do whatever you want and stuff in the day. But a school's a little bit of a different animal. But I hold that pretty clear in the community.
Okay.
And I have a whole huge spill. I'll just give you the spill of what I do. So I live and work, most see my clients in CUNA. I don't see them in Real Solutions. So most of CUNA is about 5 minutes away from this office. So if I had my client and I had a 2 o'clock appointment and it's about 2:05, right at 2:05.
Yeah.
If they're not one of those big talkers that is going to try and get a session of free therapy over the phone, I'd just call and say, hey, this is Jim Grigg. I have a 2 o'clock appointment with you. Just curious if you're on your way. And most typically they would go, oh gosh, I totally spaced it. I can't believe it. I had an alarm. You know, I'll be right there. Is that okay? And I'm like, yep, if you come in the next 5 minutes or so, we'll still have 50 minutes. We'll still be good. You know, and so that's scenario one. And then I got more onto that later. I'll discuss. But here's where I go with that one. You know, if they don't answer, I go, hey, it's Jim Grigg. It's about 2:05. Or I have the front desk do it. If they're a talker, they'll do the same. I prepped them with my monologue here and stuff. But 2:05, I show that I have a 2 o'clock appointment with you. Here's hoping that you're on your way and everything's okay. Just be aware there is an applicable no-show fee if you miss this, and you'll be removed from my schedule and just have to get back on, which is okay. Just let me call and we'll get you back on the schedule. Thanks. Hopefully everything's great and you're on your way. Take care. Have a nice day. Bye. The way I do that is because then there has to be some kind of contact with the client. I don't just leave them on my schedule and then the next week they no-show me again.
Yeah.
They have to contact and I have to figure out what happened and get on my schedule, and so it doesn't happen. And so imagine that either they no-showed me or they came in 10 minutes late. When they come in, I say, oh, so glad you made it. I'm good to see you. Thanks for rushing over, you know, and stuff. And I say, hey, I'm just sort of curious. I know it can be hectic with life. What kind of scheduling stuff do you use? Do you use your phone? Do you put appointments in it? Do you ever use reminders? And let's go ahead and look at that, and let's put my next appointment in there. We can make it repeat in your phone as an alarm and stuff like that and stuff. I figure it's helpful for them and me. Helpful for me because they won't miss my appointment, and helpful for them, they won't have that. And then most of them I find, if they're missing my appointment, they're missing everybody's appointment. They're missing their doctor's appointments and everything else, and they're getting kicked out of doctor's offices. So going over scheduling is a helpful life skill that helps them. In fact, if it's a refugee, half the time we used to go to RX pharmacy and get a whole bunch of those, or Life Counseling has really good calendars. And when I used to see refugees, the first meeting with them, I'd be like, oh hey, here's a calendar, we're going to pin this to your refrigerator,
nice.
And we're going to write my things on. Today is the 15th, so let's mark off all the days till 15, and then, you know, we put my name on it. Hey, do you have doctor's appointments and other things? Because refugees, to me, were a little bit notorious of not, in a bad way, they just didn't understand things, that they would then schedule a doctor appointment at the same time as a counseling appointment. And erroneously and falsely, they would believe the doctor's appointment was more important.
Yeah.
And I never agreed with that logic, but anyway, and so I help them put all the schedules. Oh, you got school from this time to this time for your English language classes, and you've got to meet with the IRC at this time. And then I say, so today is this day. You know, the first thing you're going to do tomorrow is you're going to wake up and you're going to scratch out yesterday, and then you're going to look at today and see what you got and stuff. And that would help reduce
Yeah.
no-shows, because I do not like no-shows. In
Yeah.
fact, my fabulous master's degree right there, I did a thesis on client stuff like that. So I'll have to share it with you sometime when you're just kidding. You're like, no. Okay, so that's cancellations and disappointments. I say grievous stuff. Okay, the rest of it should make sense. Oh, crisis and emergency service. We are not a crisis service, and so you can call the regular number 9 to 5, and hopefully you'll get an answer and someone will get back to you. But if you call at 10 o'clock at night, you're not going to get anybody. They're going to say there is we'll leave a message and we'll get back with you the next day.
Yeah.
Optum does have for Medicaid clients a crisis number. That there's another form in here that I will show you what it is, and it has that crisis number on there.
Okay.
But any questions on that? Great.
No.
Fine. You're good to go. So that's your disclosure and consent. Let's go. And then I just go client rights. Yeah, it just talks a little bit more. Usually they've already signed all this stuff.
Okay.
And so, and this is the one that I email out. It's a PDF document, you'll notice.
Okay.
And it has all that stuff in it. I thought this one, maybe it's only if they're community-based that I usually give the Medicaid number on. So that's the initial paperwork base. Do you have questions about anything?
I have a question about HIPAA, but I don't know if it's specific to this.
Sure. Ask.
So if the parent signs release of information, does that allow me to share information with like the teachers and principal and the school and stuff of what's going on?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Let's go really quick here. That wasn't the button I wanted.
Because I imagine a lot of the things that I'd be working with the kids would be some of their behaviors in the school, you know, in their classroom or whatever. So the teachers are, if I'm working with them and we're talking about what's going on and ways to help them in the classroom, if that were to come up, like how much am I allowed to just kind of share with them, like ideas or what's working and...
Okay, here's an example of an ROI. Oh, this is for medical. You do have to get eventually a medical because we will need it because that's part of a Medicaid requirement is to show I've met with, I've communicated with the doctor. So usually if you go to the referral is a basic release to the school. And so that will allow me to talk to the teachers and stuff like that. But
Okay.
this allows me to go any other agency or anything there. I just put the client information to be disclosed, to, from, in need, and the signature. So if you look at the one we use for medical, it has, here's all we need, the latest physical.
Okay.
And then you put the doctor's office name there and then coordinate best care with the client. So,
Okay.
and that's kind of what I would put in a normal one. Say I wanted to talk to a kid's, I don't know, what would I want to talk to outside of the parent in the school? Something. Probation officer. Then I would just put probation officer and I would put information about updates and treatment would be what information is to be disclosed, and purpose would be to coordinate best care for the client and help them complete their probation requirements.
Okay.
Good. Other questions?
No, that was my main one.
Okay.